Hi, I'm Roxanne Richardson, and this is the Casual Friday podcast. In this week's podcast, I have updates on a work in progress that has been very frustrating. I have spinning updates galore, and I want to also tell you a little bit about an online spinners guild that I have been participating in the past few months that you might find interesting if you are a new or intermediate or experienced spinner. So let's get started. I've been working on a summer top that I thought would take me a couple of weeks because it's going to be short sleeve. I thought, oh, this will be a quick little project to do, and then I'll have a summer top, and then I'll move on to whatever. And it's been taking a while, and part of it is that I've been having to take a time out from it periodically because of some of the problems with it. And I've talked about this in the past couple of Casual Fridays. So let me just hold this up to kind of show you what this looks like. You see? So I have these couple of different lace patterns going on. I actually started with a provisional cast on here. So I started with this pattern and then went to this one and then did this one. And then I was going to come back to do this so that I could get the nice zigzag in the bind off. It doesn't zig and zag as well in the cast on. But I realized when I was working this band, I'd used the stitch pattern before and I thought this isn't working the way that I thought it should work. And so I looked at my original source and realized, oh, my original source was knit flat, and because of that and the extra stitches, it lined up differently, and I realized I had needed to make some changes when working in the round that I hadn't made. So I made them for this one. And then in last Casual Friday, I was trying to decide whether I would just leave this one the way it was or if I would rip that out and then re-knit it going in this direction before I did this. And that's what I did. The provisional cast on was here. I just captured stitches with a thin needle right above that purl bump all the way around, cut it off, re-knit the purl bump, and then re-knit this because it looks the same in both directions, and then knit that. So I got all that. And because I'm designing this myself, I wasn't completely sure how long this was going to be and really how long I wanted a summer top. I know how long I want like a wool sweater. I know that I want the bottom of the sweater up to the armhole to be between 14 and 16 inches. A little bit of length or shortness one way or the other doesn't matter, and it depends kind of on what's going on with the stitch pattern, that decision. So I'm happy with that. I wasn't sure I wanted a summer top that was quite as long. I just wasn't sure, but I also don't really like the real short ones either. What I did know is I wanted the lace to end like before my bra strap, so that you wouldn't be, or the band, so that you wouldn't be seeing that through the lace. So when I had the lace done, I held it up to see how long was that going to come down long enough, or was it going to be short? And I wanted a little, so that I would kind of know how much stockinette to add, because I would need some stockinette between where the lace ended and the underarm. And I just wasn't sure how that was going to play out because I've never tried to decide on the length of something in that way before. This whole time, I have had a beginning of round marker and a mid-round marker. And when I was working this lace pattern here, in order for it to maintain the continuity of the stitch pattern across the end of round to beginning of round transition, I would sometimes have to move the beginning of round marker and the mid-round marker, one stitch this way and then one stitch that way in order to maintain it all. So as I was working this stockinette, I just went through and I counted all my stitches to make sure that I had the right number, and I had the right number between each of the markers. And that was true. And so I worked in stockinette for a while. You can see how far, you know, I worked in stockinette, and then it was going to be time to divide for the front and the back. And this is my plan. I would work the last round all the way to the end of the round, and then I would turn so that the purl side would face me, and I would purl back to the mid round. And what I decided to do was that I would add an extra inch on each side by casting on a couple of stitches over the course of 4 rows. So 2 stitches, 2 stitches, 4 stitches, 4 stitches, as I was working back and forth. And as I had that extra width, then I would work straight up until I get to the shoulders, and then I can do shoulder shaping with short rows. So that was my plan. When I was doing my short rows, and you can see I'm like right in the middle of them here at the top, it was going to be laid out. I'll put a picture on the screen so you can kind of see what I mean. I had enough stitches. I think I had 124, I think, by the time I had split for the front and back and then added the extra stitches. I had 124, what I thought I should have. 44 should be for each shoulder. And these shoulders are going to come over a little bit here. And then 36 for the neck. And so I thought I'll do 4 sets of short rows. So I'll work across until I'm 11 stitches before the end, turn 11 stitches before the end, turn 22 stitches before the end, 22 stitches before the end, 33 and 33. And by the time I got to this third set of short rows, I thought, okay, I'm going to mark the neck. So I could do that. And I wasn't getting the right stitch count. At first I thought it was over and then it was under, and I was like, what? What's going on? I don't understand. And so I just went through and I counted the total number of stitches that I had. And I was short by 8 stitches. I'm like, why is that? And so then I looked at what I had held here on my barber cord. And as I was counting them, I saw immediately what the problem was. And the problem wasn't that I had miscounted and divided up the 2 halves incorrectly. Let's go to the overhead and I can show you what went wrong. Okay, so you can see I have kept my beginning of round markers in. This was when I was working down, I had my marker here. But you can see the big yellow marker is the beginning of round marker. So here's where I started working back and forth. I started doing my cast on to get extra stitches. But when I did my first turn, I was supposed to come to the end of the round, which is right here. And there are 8 stitches sitting here. I don't know why I turned it back. It could be that, you know, the needle cable was pulled out here. I have no idea what went wrong. I just know that I turned and went back 8 stitches too early. If I had actually gone to the marker, it would have been correct. And it never occurred to me. I've never made this kind of mistake before. So you can be sure that in the future, I will be double confirming things like this. So yeah, this is about 8,000 stitches, I think. Right here, this is 8,000 stitches. So that all has to get ripped out and started over. For other mistakes that I have made, I tend not to frog if I can help it. And this is a situation where I won't be able to help it. I have to go back because I missed these entire 8 stitches. Other situations where I might frog back is like if I'm doing a sleeve, I'm knitting flat, I'm doing decreases on the beginning of the row or the beginning of the round, and then I forget to do them at the end, and I do that repeatedly. So one side is getting shaped and the other isn't. There's not a good way to add or remove multiple increases or decreases. So that's a situation where I'd have to frog back. But when I was working on this lace, I would make mistakes. So I had 16 repeats of this stitch pattern. So the mistakes would usually happen when I'm working one of these decrease lines right here. Let's see, where is the situation? Like right here. So I'm working this decrease line here, and then I need to start one that's going this way. So I don't have the previous round to show me where there's an existing decrease and I need to do that another one and a yarn over. I'm having to start something new, and I'm having to, you know, recite the pattern stitch in my head, like, oh, gotta knit 3, decrease 1, yarn, you know, I would say it in my head. And then I would realize a few rounds later, oh, something is wrong. But usually just in the one repeat. It wasn't like I was doing it incorrectly everywhere. And in that situation, I found that I would need to ladder down the entire repeat. So like someplace from here to here. Because if I tried to do a fewer stitches, I couldn't correct myself right. So I'd have to ladder down all 14 stitches for a few rows and then work them back up. I prefer doing this, even though it's kind of a pain in the butt and it takes a while to do. It's faster than trying to rip back to the round where the mistake was, because I could end up, here I have one repeat that's wrong out of the 16. And if I rip all 16 of them out from multiple rows, when I start knitting up again, I could very well add a new mistake in one of those other 15 repeats, even if I get this one correct. So my preference is to just ladder down whenever possible. I know a lot of people like to use lifelines. Some people use one like every time the repeat starts, they put in a lifeline. I don't do that. If I have to rip back in lace, oftentimes I'll look for a row that's all in stockinette, like in this kind of stitch pattern here. There was, right side rows are where the yarn overs and decreases take place, and wrong side rows are just plain knit rows if you're doing it in the round, purl rows if you're knitting a flat. So I might go back to then, but what I tend to do is take like a very small needle, like a size 0, like a 2mm needle, and I just go through and I pick up all of the stitches along there, and then rip back to that point if that's something I need to do. It's very rare. And in something like this, I'm ripping back to stockinette, so I don't have to worry about a lifeline. But that's my technique. I have quite a few videos on laddering down, and it's not, I do have ones on how to ladder down a single column of stitches, but that's so rare for me. It's usually a span of stitches where the problem is. And so that whole span of stitches is what gets laddered down at the same time, recaptured on a double point, and then re-knit back up. And that can be scary the first time you do it, so I recommend practicing on a swatch. This is something that swatches are great for. This is something, the point is to learn something new from a swatch. It isn't just to get your gauge information. So you can learn how to fix a certain kind of mistake on a swatch. That'll be great. So I have quite a few videos on laddering down spans of different kinds of stitch patterns, different situations. Sometimes it's an edging, sometimes it's a middle of a row, sometimes it's a stitch pattern. So just different approaches to that kind of thing. I don't think I have one specifically on lace because I just don't do it very often, but I have some on cables, and how if you discover a cable that's miscrossed way later when it's kind of too late to ladder down, how you can even fix that with duplicate stitch. I've done that before with a fully completed sweater where then I realized there was a mistake. That's the state of this top. So I'm really liking this top. I really like the way the lace works. I just don't know if I have it in me to rip all of this out and then re-knit it now. This might need a timeout. It might need a timeout until February. This might be a finish it February project. I tend to be somebody who gets interested in a project and wants to work it all the way through until it's done. But that's only true if I'm still happy with it. If I make a huge mistake like this, that can be a little soul crushing, and I know I'll feel better about it in February. And if I fix it in February, then I'll have all next summer I can wear it. Whereas even if I get this done, I'll only have, you know, 6 weeks maybe, but at least I'd have 6 weeks. I don't know. I don't know what I want to do. I'm definitely going to rip it back now so that the yarn doesn't stay too kinky. And then we'll see how I feel once I rip it all the way back. If I feel like I can make myself move forward on it again or not. I like to let you guys know when I make these horrible mistakes, because they're human mistakes and they're not really a reflection of how good or bad a knitter I am. They're just a reflection of making an assumption, carrying on without going back and checking something that, again, I have never had this problem before. So it didn't occur to me to check for that. My mistakes, as somebody who's been knitting for 40 years and I'm a master hand knitter, my experience is my mistakes tend to be big, because the little mistakes don't even count to me as mistakes because I can usually fix them easily, or fix them with effort, but I can fix them. So I don't even think of them as like a mistake. So I just keep carrying on. But when you're a newer knitter or less experienced, some of those things might seem overwhelming and insurmountable. And this is not insurmountable. It's just annoying. I know how to fix it. I just don't know that I want to fix it right now. So I've got quite a lot of things going on in my spinning world right now. I'll talk about some of them, not all of them. Tour de Fleece is about to start. And it starts tomorrow, July 4th. In preparation for that, I've been trying to get some other spinning done and over with before Tour de Fleece starts so that I can focus on that. So I want to show you, I'm going to go to the overhead real quick and show you the stuff that I've been trying to wrap up right before Tour de Fleece, and then we'll come back and I'll talk about my plans for Tour de Fleece. So this is what I've currently got on my bobbins, and I need to get these cleared off, like either like tonight or tomorrow. So because Tour de Fleece is starting and I want to get started on my Tour de Fleece project. So this is yarn that I spun this winter. I dyed some Falkland wool that I had, and then I spun this. And by weight, I thought I had enough for the sweater I wanted to knit, but because I hand spun this, it's denser than a commercial yarn, so I need more yards of it. So I'll need more by weight because I'm getting fewer yards per 100 grams than a commercial yarn. So luckily, I used Wool Tincture dyes that are pre-measured in order to dye this. So I was able to get more of the dye. I got more Falkland. It's from a different source than I got the original Falkland, and it did spin differently, but I'm hoping that everything will come out okay. So these are my 3 bobbins that are going to make the skein that should hopefully coordinate with this, even if they're not exactly the same. I think this will be the yarn that I use on the sleeve. This will be used on the body, and these will be used on the sleeves. I think it'll be a pretty good match, I'm hoping. And then this one, this is, well, you can see how I have this red right here. So what I do is I spin 3 bobbins worth on the big bobbin, and then when I divided it up, I think I had 100 grams, so I divided it up into 33 point whatever grams, and I spun that, and then I spun some red to separate it, so and then spun the next one, some red to separate to the next one, so it would be on a big bobbin, and then I wound it off onto these storage bobbins so that I can make a 3-ply. But I ran out of storage bobbins, so I have to get that light blue plied, and then I can move this. Because another thing that I've been working on, I haven't done any in a while. Well, I've been doing spinning, but not the plying. And I've got a bunch more bobbins like this. The farm where I volunteer as a fiber assistant, Gail Wood's farm, they have a flock of fin sheep. And so I have a bag of one of the brown fin fleeces that I'm using to spin into yarn for the farm to sell in their farm store. I have this one skein that I've plied up, and now I need to do another one. And I've got, so these are like what I would call full bobbin, and then I've got a bunch of partial ones, which is why all my storage bobbins are full, and I need to get them cleared out, like I said, so that I can start Tour de Fleece. So these are some yarns that I have been working on and will have finished. And when if I either move on to a different project and I put the lace top in timeout till February, I will start working immediately on the sweater that this yarn is for. If I finish that, if I work on the lace top, it'll be a couple of weeks probably before I get started on it, but I do want it to get started on that sweater. So tomorrow, July 4th, is the start of Tour de Fleece. So this is an annual worldwide challenge that spinners undergo, and you decide for yourself what it is you want to do. You can join teams in various places. You can join multiple teams in various places. Sometimes there are shops that will have a team. We have a local shop called Darn Knit Anyway that offers spinning classes, and they have a big makers lounge area. And so for the kickoff, we won't be doing it on the first day because it's a federal holiday here, but on Sunday they'll have a kickoff there. I think they have 77 spinners have signed up. And so they just have events around Tour de Fleece. Some of them are by Zoom, some of them are in person, different times, different days of the week, and that sort of thing. It's just a way to do it within community, which is fun. If you're not near other spinners, you can do things online. There are Ravelry groups devoted to Tour de Fleece. The idea is that while the bicyclists' wheels are spinning, the spinners' wheels are spinning. When they have a challenge day, we have a challenge day. When they have a rest day, we have a rest day. And every year I decide something I'm going to do. One year I think it was the first year I did it. I just decided I had several raw fleeces that I hadn't scoured. I was just going to learn how to scour and just do it and get through all of those fleeces. And that's what I did. I don't even know if I spun anything that year. And then there was another year, a friend of mine encouraged me to actually spin because I had not been that into spinning really. I'd been a spinner for like 5 years, but I hadn't really done that much with it. And so I got into it, and they ended up really sort of kicking me off into doing more spinning. And eventually I ended up spinning a whole sweater's quantity of wool for a project, which I thought before had been an overwhelming idea that I couldn't do that. Last year I spun another sweater's quantity. Amber, who is a viewer, sent me some roving for spinning, and so I spun that up, and then I knit a sweater out of that wool. And this year that's my goal, is to do another sweater spin using a Shetland fleece that I bought at a spinning retreat in March. So I took the scoured fleece with me to my spinning group the other day, and I laid a sheet out on the floor, and then I just started separating it by color, because this is a beautiful fleece. It's like a charcoal gray, but there are different shades and there are different clumps of color, and I wanted to separate them out to kind of get an idea of how much of each color I had, so then I could decide what am I going to do. One thing is to just blend it all together, but again, there are some different colors, so I'd have to think about how I was going to blend it if I wanted it to be fairly even. And I don't know that I want to do that. I might want to do a gradient. I feel like there's there's a true black, there's a dark gray, and then there's sort of a medium to light gray. And in some ways there's even some in between. There's almost like 5 colors. So I laid it all out on the floor again here in my office, and I want to show it to you. And then we'll come back here to the overhead, and I can show you some of the things that I'm thinking about and want to consider as I'm deciding how I'm going to use this wool. So let me come around to the other side, and I'll grab the camera, and then I'll show you what the fleece looks like. All right, so here is the true black. Like I have never seen anything like truly black. Usually it's a very, very dark brown. This is black. This is got a lot of black mixed in with it, and you can kind of see these little white, these are kind of like guard hairs. So this is a single coated Shetland, but it still has some guard hairs in it. So overall it's very soft, but it does have some areas that are coarser, and that's another thing I have to think about. And two people advised me to get all of to make this, you know, truly black, get all the white out of it. But I almost think I have to take tweezers to this. I don't know how much of that I'll be able to actually get out completely. So that's next darker, and then we have this one, which is pretty dark. This one isn't that much lighter, but there is some difference. And then we come to this lighter stuff. So I feel like I have the most of this lighter color, and then it starts running in, it starts to get a little darker and darker and darker to black. So my feeling is maybe I want to do a gradient, but I don't know. I just don't know, because then I have to use that gradient somehow in a sweater, and I'm just not sure how I would do that. Or maybe I do it like with stripe. I don't know. If anybody has any ideas about how, and I do want to do this as a sweater. I don't want to do like a shawl or something like that. I do want to figure out how to use it. I might do some experimenting with carding first, and maybe, you know, blending some things. I don't know. But yeah, for sure I have the most of these right there. They're pretty much the same. That one might be a little bit darker, and then it starts getting darker and darker and darker. So, and if anybody has ideas, I'm all ears. Let me know. So this is a chunk that I just kind of separated out because it's really full of guard hairs, and I just don't want to blend this with the rest of it. I suspect this is from kind of the back end of the sheep. I was looking at it with my friend Shelly, who was at the retreat with me, and she's taken courses in grading wool and stuff. And so we were looking at the information about the sheep. It had a number and it had a name. The name of the sheep was Black Truffle, but the number was 2578, which indicated that it was born in 2025. So this, and it was sheared this spring, so this was a lamb fleece. She was looking at these tips, and she was asking me about them, and she's like, these are like the feet. This could be the fetal tips, and a lot of times they break off. And I looked at it and originally thought, well, maybe it was like just sunburned, but if you look at it, it's also light at the bottom. And one of the things about this color that's called Shayla, there's so many different color names for, there's so many colors for Shetland, and they have all of these Scottish names. And Shayla is charcoal brown, but there's also a Shayla 2, and that one goes from black at the tips to lighter gray at the ends. And at first I thought maybe that's what I had, but then I realized, no, the black was in its own places. But you can see in here how the color just changes throughout the lock. And so we were pulling on these, and these are very strong. They don't break off. So I think that this is just the characteristic of this color, is that it changes or can change. The black that I have might have some white guard hairs in it, but tends to be black the whole length, while the gray ones do seem to be changing color through the course of the lock, which I think is very interesting, which, you know, makes the sorting of the colors a challenge. And that's why I'm thinking, you know, blending them somehow, although trying to keep the black separate. And so I just don't know how I want to blend them. And if anybody has ideas about either keeping the colors separate and then applying them together, or I don't know. There's all kinds of ways that you can do things, and I don't know how to do any of them. So it has to be something that can't be too overly complicated for me to do and succeed at with this particular fleece. But I'm really looking forward to working with it. It should be fun. One last thing I wanted to share with you about spinning is that I have a local spinning group that I go to on Wednesday mornings and then once a month on Tuesday evenings. They have, you know, 2 cohorts of these people. So the Wednesday is mostly retired people. The Tuesdays are when the 20, 30, 40-year-olds who are still working are coming. So it's really interesting to be in that mixed demographic and to see what people are working on. And that's really great because it's part of our Weavers Guild. I'm not a weaver, but the spinning is part of the Weavers Guild, and we've got a really, I think it's the largest Weavers Guild in the country. That's what they tell me. So we have a lot of resources and really knowledgeable people that I can rely on. But it's not always enough. Like for the past few years, I'd been looking for more advanced spinning classes that were what I was interested in spinning. You can often find things about managing color, and arguably this Shetland thing is about managing color, but I tend to work more with solids or things I'm dyeing myself, and I'm not working with braids, and I'm not trying to do fractal spins. I don't knit with yarns like that, so I don't want to make them. And so I was really struggling to find things near me that were what I was interested in. And then I found that spinning retreat I went to in March, and I'm going to go again next year. My friend Shelley that I went to with that retreat also had been telling me about SheepSpot. And I felt like I had been hearing about it a couple of times from our local spinning group. And it turned out that I had even joined SheepSpot a couple of years ago and then never went further with it. So I want to tell you a little bit about what it is. It's open worldwide, which is one of the nice things. It's this online spinning community. I'll leave a link to the website because there's different aspects to SheepSpot. There's what's called the flock, and that's free to join. She has a website that explains everything about SheepSpot, and then the actual community is located on something called Mighty Networks. So it's separate from like Facebook and all that stuff. There's no ads. It's just this community and the forums and the videos and the questions that you can ask people or classes that you can take on, all that kind of thing. So there's sort of 3 components that you pay to be a member of, and 2 of them are kind of shorter term. They're not short term, but they're shorter term. And then there's one that can be an ongoing one annually. So they have Spin School, and that's 5 months. I think they offer it twice a year. And so on the website, I don't know when those sign-up times are, but they have a button you can click to be on the wait list. And so then you get notified when they're about to open spots. And there's usually like a free class for 4 days that explain different things that you can learn about and then make your decision about whether you're going to join Spin School. So that would be for like beginning spinners. So if you really don't feel like you have local resources, or you're just trying to learn, or you want to learn and you're struggling with YouTube videos, then this would be a place where you could get instruction. The woman who runs SheepSpot, Sasha Torres, is a former university professor. She's very good at teaching, and her materials and everything are very well planned, very well taught. It's very good. I did not do Spin School because by the time I was really ready to do something on SheepSpot, I was beyond that. But then for intermediate to advanced spinners, and she again has a free 4-day thing where you go through and you kind of evaluate where you are in your spinning in these different areas, so you can get a kind of a sense of where you're kind of maybe lagging and what you could or want to know, and where you're more advanced, and then help you focus on what it is you want to learn and what you want to focus on. And so then that's the guild, and that's like an annual membership, and there are daily Zoom meetups, all different times of day to accommodate all different kinds of schedule. And they have monthly programs, like a class, like a focus. There was one on scouring and preparing raw fleeces a couple of months ago with Melly Knits. And so those were recorded. So if you couldn't go to the live thing and to be there for the Q&A at the end, you could watch the recording later. And then the next month there was a course on grist to understand how different fibers behave and different ways of spinning behave, and can put more air, more yards per pound into your spun fiber, depending on what you're doing. I think last month was about the mother color concept. I didn't take that because I don't tend to focus much on color. And we're doing Tour de Fleece this month. So there's something different every month that you can access, and you can go back and look at the recordings later. Often there are handouts that are associated with them, those kinds of things. So that's something that you can do annually once you get into the intermediate space. And then there is breed school. And that is 12 months, so they do it once a year, July to June, and it just started yesterday. I wasn't sure I wanted to do it because I have done a breed study. I have spun lots of different breeds. That's one of my ongoing things. But when I did my initial breed study of 30 breeds, I had 1 ounce of comb top of each. I was a fairly new spinner. I was using that as an opportunity to experiment with a lot of different wools in quick succession so I could understand something. I didn't take good notes. I didn't know about sampling. I just kind of spun it however it seemed like the wool needed to be spun. So I've spun a lot of different breeds, but I wanted a more systematic approach, and so that's what I'm going to get from breed school. And they're doing 1 breed per month for the 12 months. And then there are a lesson at the beginning of the month. There's a bonus lesson, and there's videos or Zoom calls where you can ask questions or talk about the breed at the end of the month. There's a community where you can talk with each other, share your samples, all that kind of thing. So there's all different components of this website or this community called SheepSpot. Again, I will leave links to the SheepSpot website down below. And I did join a few years ago, but I joined the Flock, which is access to the free resources. And there is even a community there. It's just different and smaller, or just different, I guess. I can't really say it's smaller because I don't know. So there are ways to interact, but you're not going to get Breed School, Spin School, or the Guild with all of those other monthly programs and Zoom calls and things like that. But this sounds like something that you might be interested in. I'm really finding it valuable, and I'm learning a lot, which is what my goal always is to learn more, and oftentimes in a fairly systematic way. So I'm really enjoying it, and I just thought I'd share that with you. Well, that's it for this week's Casual Friday. If you have any comments or questions about today's video, or suggestions for videos you'd like to see in the future, you can leave those down in the comments below, or join the discussion in my Ravelry group, Rocks. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.